Hi, it's me again, with, of course, another rant video. This script has been sitting on my hard drive for over 2 months now, collecting dust alongside my VR headset. I kept rewriting it, deleting half of it, getting distracted, and eventually abandoning it altogether. So instead of pretending this is the same video I wanted to make back then, let's just talk about what I actually want to talk about now. VR games.
There's so much porn!
They are a niche within a niche. First you need a headset, then you need a PC that won't spontaneously combust trying to render 2 screens at once, and even after all that, most VR games barely have a player base. They're either hidden gems or hidden for a reason. Now I'm here not to convince millions of people to buy a headset. I have like 100 subs. I'm here because VR is one of the coolest pieces of gaming technology I've ever experienced, and despite all of its flaws, I think it's worth talking about. My first experience with VR goes all the way back to around 2016, some shopping mall and one of those VR stands with a roller coaster simulator. 20 hryvnias later and I stepped out thinking I just wanna see the future. It wasn't even a game, just a glorified roller coaster tech demo, but my monkey brain was completely sold on the idea. For years, a headset stayed firmly in the maybe one day category. Then, in 2022, I finally bought a Quest 2. And yeah, it really was as cool as I'd imagined. So, introduction's over. VR is just fun, whether it's your first hour or your thousands. There's still something almost magical about putting on what is essentially a brick full of cameras and batteries, only to completely forget you're standing in your own room 5 minutes later. One moment you're in your bedroom and next you're climbing skyscrapers, reloading under pressure, fighting goblins, or accidentally punching your wardrobe because you got a little too immersed. And that's what makes VR different. Not the graphics, not the resolution, not the marketing buzzwords, the fact that every once in a while your brain genuinely forgets it's playing a game. And ever since I got my VR headset, I mostly stuck to free games, discovering things one by one. Pavlov VR, Beta, Rec Room, and VR Chat, the latter already gaining its grim reputation.
Because I have phantom pain!
But it was still fun, incredibly fun at that. Rec Room scratched that Roblox on PC itch, Pavlov scratched my gun itch, and both had voice chat, which led to some genuinely memorable interactions. I remember this one guy who only ever used sniper rifles, so I asked him why. Not because he was bad, I was just curious. I want to be like Simo Haiha. Yeah, but you're using a Barrett. Potato, tomato, and we just kept playing. Rock climbing, shooting, socializing, it all felt surprisingly natural. Even though VR wasn't something many people could afford, the communities it built felt incredibly close-knit. Everywhere I went, whether it was a social hangout or shooty bang lobbies, I'd run into the same kinds of people you'd find in any multiplayer game. The pros who knew every exploit, the noobs who were either adorable or insufferable, the LARPers who could turn an empty room into a Hollywood blockbuster, and everyone in between. It was honestly great. I still think Rec Room, Pavlov, and VR Chat are the 3 pillars of getting into VR if you ever buy a headset. You should start there. But after about half a year of socializing, discovering new rooms in Rec Room, and getting tired of Pavlov's jank, I wanted something more. Something I could really sink my teeth into, something that felt closer to home.
Oh, блять.
By 2023, I'd already played through Stalker Anomaly, Gamma, Narodная Solyanka, and a dozen other mods like Dead Air. I loved them, but after a while the ancient X-ray engine and the lack of immersion compared to VR just weren't enough anymore. Anytime I wasn't playing League of Legends or Rec Room, I'd be sinking hours into Anomaly, and yet I still wanted more. Then one game came into my sights. Into the Radius. A game so Stalker coded that you'd think GSC had secretly made it, yet different enough to feel like it's its own thing. No actual anomalies from Stalker, no Chernobyl, no Zone as we know it, just something familiar wrapped around an entirely different mystery. I was hooked almost instantly. The atmosphere, the guns, the mechanics, even something as simple as sitting down and playing the guitar and smoking a cig on top of a fucking crane. Everything just clicked. I actually made an entire video about the first location back in 2023, recorded footage, wrote the script, did the whole shebang, and then never uploaded it. If this video gets enough likes, maybe I'll finally dust it off. But that's besides the point. The radius felt strangely close to home. The lonely village in Bolotki, the names, the scenery, the old Soviet architecture, the weapons, it all carried this feeling of familiarity without simply copying Stalker. I just wanted to stay there. The story, the atmosphere, the quiet loneliness, it kept pulling me back. That said, it isn't perfect. Once the main story ends, there's not a whole lot left to do. There are no NPCs to talk to, no side quests, no factions to get involved with, and while it shares a lot of Stalker's DNA, an exclusion zone, strange monsters, dangerous anomalies, questions left unanswered, it only resembles Stalker on the surface. Into the Radius, or generally the Radius, isn't Chernobyl. It's a completely different story. It's a story about loneliness in the world already dead, waiting to be rebuilt by something. I don't want to spoil any more than that. It's one of those games that's better experienced than explained. Like I said, if enough of you want to see it, I'll finally upload the old Radius video from 2023. Visual and hallucinogenic warning, that video is kind of shit by today's standards. So, be wary of what you ask for. Another staple of the VR industry is Blade and Sorcery, which I played exactly once, forgot about, and frankly couldn't care for less. Battle Talon, on the other hand, immediately grabbed me. It's basically a dungeon-crawling Souls-like where you fight your way through trials uncovering secrets, loot progressively gets better, and you beat the ever-loving shit out of goblins. The combat is what sold me. It feels less like wildly flailing your arms around and more like Sekiro in VR. Dodge, parry, strike, repeat. Every fight has this rhythm to it, where you're constantly reacting instead of just swinging until something falls over. Of course there's still an option, but, I mean, really? I haven't played Battle Talent nearly as much as some other VR games I've mentioned, but every time I boot it up, I end up staying longer than I planned. There's something satisfying about walking into a dungeon with a rusty sword, crawling out with slightly less rusty gear, and praying the next room doesn't immediately cave your skull in. It's a simple gameplay loop, but sometimes that's all you really need. H3VR. One of the first VR games I've ever watched someone play alongside with the Rick and Morty VR game, it was one of those titles that made 12-year-old me think, yeah, I need me one of those headsets. And here we are. After spending over a decade in early access, H3VR is finally a full-fledged 1.0. 10 years. Most AAA studios barely support a game for 2 before moving on to the next cash cow, yet Anton Hand kept adding guns, mechanics, maps, and entire game modes for years without ever abandoning the project. Hell, by the time 1.0 came out, the game had received well over 100 major updates. What's even funnier is that when 1.0 finally released, Anton basically turned around and said, anyway, H3VR 2, which, whenever that comes out, is an instant purchase for me. The sequel has apparently been in development in secret for over 2 years and is being rebuilt from the ground up rather than simply expanding on the original. As for H3VR itself, it feels like sweet honey. There's frankly irresponsible amounts of firearms to mess with. Revolvers, musket, modern assault rifles, anti-material rifles, machine guns, experimental prototypes, World War II relics, and TF2 weapons. Sure, why not? There are plenty of different game modes, but the one I always come back to is Take and Hold. You capture objectives, earn tokens, buy better equipment, defend yourself against increasingly angry waves of enemies, and pray you don't immediately get domed because you decided to upgrade your fucking revolver instead of buying an actual AK. And yes, the enemies are sausages. No, I'm not joking. There's actually a good reason for it. H3VR's guns are absurdly detailed. Every magazine, safety, charging handle, bolt release, and moving part is simulated by hand. If Anton had also decided to make hyper-realistic enemies on top of that, the game would have absolutely chewed through people's hardware. So instead, sausages. They're expressive, hilarious, their voice lines are funny, surprisingly tactical, and honestly so iconic that I can't imagine the game without them anymore. The thing I appreciate most about H3VR is that it never tries to be realistic for the sake of being realistic. It's realistic because it's fun. Reloading becomes its own little puzzle. You stop pressing R and start actually handling the firearm. There are no jams, but in the settings you can change the realistic modes into playful ones or vice versa, to where the gravity, the movement speed, the enemies, and the gun controls can become as close to reality as VR can allow. And somehow, despite all that simulation, the game runs ridiculously well. Sometimes, it's fun to grab a definitely reasonably sized 1911 and send sausages flying. Sometimes it's fun to grab a saw, load nothing but tracers and turn the night sky into the 4th of July. Both are equally valid ways of playing, and then there's mods. Battle Talent and H3VR both have phenomenal modding communities. I've run around H3VR using guns from Pixel Gun 3D, and in Battle Talent I've beaten Dark Elves to death with Cronins from Warframe way before I got them in actual Warframe. Mods don't carry these games, they just make already fantastic games even better. And then there's Half-Life Alyx. What can I say about this game that hasn't already been said 1,000 times over? Everyone already knows it's good. Everyone already knows it's one of the best VR games ever made. Everyone already knows Valve spent years polishing every interaction until it felt like second nature. But none of that tells you why it matters. Half-Life Alyx isn't my favorite VR game because it's a Half-Life game. That is a big part, but it's my favorite because it understands VR better than almost every other developer on the planet. Everything in Half-Life Alyx has a purpose. You don't reload because the game told you to press R, you reach for the magazine, you slam it into the pistol, and you wreck the slide. And because you're panicking, you might miss. Not because the game rolled a dice, but because you fumbled. The first time I found a shotgun shell hidden inside a shelf, I instinctively crouched down and started rummaging through junk like an actual scavenger. The first time a headcrab jumped at me, I physically backed away into my mother's fucking piano. Not because the game forced me to, but because my brain completely forgot there was still a room around me. That's what Alyx does better than almost every other VR game. It makes you forget the headset. For a little while, you stop thinking, I'm playing Half-Life, and start thinking, I'm trying really hard not to fucking die. The gravity gloves are probably my favorite mechanic in any VR game. Such a stupidly simple idea. Point, flick to your wrist, catch the thing you're flicked, and that's it. And somehow, after hundreds of catches, it never stops being satisfying. It's one of those mechanics that makes you wonder why nobody thought of it sooner. Valve somehow managed to make picking up a bottle feel satisfying. A bottle. Think about that for a second. The shooting is fantastic. The atmosphere is glorious. Everything is great. The sound design, Jesus Christ, I don't think I've ever been so uncomfortable opening a door in any game before. Every hallway feels like there's something waiting for you. Every room makes you stop and think, do I actually want to go and explore? And then there's Jeff. Fuck you, Jeff. If you've played Alyx, you know. If you haven't, you will, eventually. The thing I appreciate most, though, isn't any specific mechanic, it's restraint. Valve could have turned Alyx into a shooting gallery. Instead, they slowed everything down because Alyx, unlike Gordon Freeman, doesn't have the HEV suit. They made you look around, open drawers, search shelves, move objects out of the way, actually exist inside City 17. In its early days, it wasn't trying to convince me that VR was the future, it simply acted like the future. It simply was, and maybe that's why I love it so much, because for 15 or 20 hours, I wasn't sitting in my bedroom wearing a headset, I was walking through the ruins of City 17, listening to combine radios in the distance, searching abandoned apartments, laughing every time Russell wouldn't shut the fuck up, holding my breath every time another headcrab skittered across the floor. People always ask me why Half-Life Alyx is so highly regarded. It's not because it's the prettiest game or because it was made by Valve, even though that is a big portion of why it's successful. It's because almost every other VR game asks, how do we put our game into VR? While Half-Life Alyx asks something completely different. What kind of game can only exist because of VR? And I honestly don't think enough developers have been asking that same question since. There are, of course, plenty more VR games. Some have managed to build communities that'll probably outlive humanity itself, others were abandoned before the first YouTube review finished rendering. Tech demos, glorified tech demos, zombie shooters, physics sandboxes, escape rooms, horror games, games inside games, games pretending not to be games, games. Infinite games. But no games. And somewhere underneath all of that, genuine masterpieces. That's the weird thing about VR. Finding a great VR game feels like less of browsing Steam and more like Indiana Jones looking for the Holy Grail, because for every genuinely brilliant project, there's another 20 made out of Unity assets, a physics plugin, and blind optimism. And unlike flat-screen indie games, VR doesn't really forgive failure. You already need expensive hardware, you need space, you need people willing to wear a plastic brick on their face for 2 hours at a time. And if your game isn't worth all that effort, people simply won't bother. So before I start sounding like I'm writing a university thesis on virtual reality, here's the rapid fire section. I'm gonna mention a bunch of VR games, some I recommend, some I don't. Figuring out which is which, well, use your fucking head. SCP Lab Rat. Sure bro, Peanut is defo scary in the big 2026. FNAF Help Wanted. Help Wanted 2. Phasmophobia. Either play it with complete bumbling morons who know absolutely fuck all, or don't bother. The moment one guy knows every ghost mechanic, the horror dies faster than the lobby. Subnautica VR. Not my thing. If you have thalassophobia though, Godspeed. Alien Rogue Incursion. This is what Routine wanted to be. Secret of the Mimic.
My name is David!
Arizona Sunshine 1, 2, and the remake. Grab a beer, grab a shotgun, go commit zombie-related atrocities. How simple can it be? The Walking Dead, Saints and Sinners. Into the Radius 2. Not technically zombies, but I'd wait a bit unless you own a NASA supercomputer, or you're legally required to benchmark GPUs on YouTube. Ghost of Tabor, or fuck you, you masochist. Escape from Tarkov is right there, go play that instead. H3 VR. Already talked about it, go buy it. Veil. Why did you think this was gonna work? Breachers. Siege is dead. So is this. War Thunder VR. Ah yes, let me get killed by a level 100 smurf who has 300 hours in a VR lower than my IQ. Truly immersive. DCS. How many fucking gigabytes? Aspire 1. Hitman World of Assassination. That game has a VR support? Since when? Skyrim VR. Todd Howard, once again, sold us Skyrim, just in another dimension. Fallout 4 VR. Not for me, might be for you though. No Man's Sky. Keep telling yourself it's fun. Zenith, The Last City.
Help me!
Gorilla Tag. What are you, 12? Beat Saber. The world's most expensive morning stretching routine. To the top. Your shoulders will file a formal complaint. Underdogs? Hell yeah. Boneworks and Bone Lab. Something lore, something MatPat, Gary's mod costs less. Job Simulator. And basically everything Alchemy Labs has made. It's a good introduction to VR. Glorified tech demo, all the same. Paint the Town Red. VR. You're playing Minecraft in a cave looking for diamonds. Unloop VR. The concept has been done before, not in VR though. It's actually pretty good. I Expect You to Die. Probably one of the best series to introduce someone to VR. Highly recommended. Davigo. Friendslub before Friendslub was cool. Farm D. Tin Can VR. I love it. The rest of you probably won't. Adobe Substance. How many? No, fuck off. I'm not paying $100 for that shit. And after all that, there's still hundreds more. Some hidden gems, some abandoned after 6 months, some genuinely incredible. Most VR slop. If your favorite VR game isn't on this list, good, means you still have something to yell at me about in the comments. I originally wanted this video to be the one after Gun Rant, but that didn't really work out, mostly because Facebook looked at one of the coolest pieces of gaming technology we've had in decades and somehow concluded that the thing everyone wanted was meetings. The metaverse. I genuinely don't know what the state the whole project is in nowadays. My best guess is somewhere between Queen Elizabeth and Vladimir Putin. Not quite alive, not quite dead, just kind of existing. And that's a shame, because VR itself was never the problem. Games like Half-Life Alyx, Boneworks, H3 VR, even something as simple as Duck Season understood that VR was actually good at one thing. They didn't just take a normal game and glue motion controls onto it, they built games around physically existing inside the world. Reloading wasn't pressing R anymore, opening a door wasn't pressing E, climbing wasn't holding space, you did those things yourself. That's the difference. VR isn't impressive because the graphics are better, it's impressive because your brain occasionally forgets it's looking at pixels. You duck behind cover because you panic, you physically lean around corners, you fumble a reload because you're stressed. For a split second, your monkey brain genuinely believes what's happening. That's the magic. I got my Quest 2 literally a year before Meta announced the Quest 3, which I'm still slightly salty about, and for a good while, it almost became a natural extension of me. I put it on for a few games, Hero Forge, YouTube, random experiments, whatever sounded interesting that day. Well, natural extension is a bit generous, because you never quite forget you're strapped a kilogram of plastic, cameras and batteries directly onto your forehead. One wrong swing and you're introducing your controller to the nearest wall, or wardrobe, or fridge. I've personally tested all three. The Quest 2 survived surprisingly well, my dignity didn't, but despite all that, the idea behind VR is still fascinating to me. Tell me you've never wanted to walk through Skyrim instead of just looking at it. Stand inside Kamartaj, explore Stark Tower, sit around a campfire in Red Dead, walk through the 100 Rads bar, pilot an X-Wing, float through space, not watch it, be there. Because that's what VR really sells, not games, places, experiences, moments. For a little while, those worlds become somewhere you've actually visited, instead of somewhere you've seen on screen. That's an incredible thing, but it's also a privilege. Headsets aren't cheap, some of them cost hundreds, other thousands, some demand a PC powerful enough to simulate the heat death of the universe every time Steam VR launches. Then you need room, then you need time, then you need to charge the headset, charge the controllers, update SteamVR, update Metalink, recalibrate Guardian because apparently your room has moved since yesterday. By the time you've finished setting everything up, you've forgotten why you wanted to play it in the first place. And I think that's ultimately why VR still hasn't become what everyone imagined. Not because it isn't magical, it sure is, but because magic is inconvenient. Eventually you stop thinking, I should play Into the Radius, and start thinking, do I really want to move my chair? The headset slowly migrates onto a shelf. You tell yourself you'll use it next weekend, then next month, then after work, then when you've got more space, more time, more energy, and before you know it, it's covered in dust. Like an old Lego minifigure you've gave an entire life to as a kid. Like an OC you wrote hundreds of stories about before eventually moving on. Like that save file you swore you'd come back to, not because you stopped loving it, but because life quietly happened around it. Every now and then I still look over at my Quest 2 and think I should really replay Into the Radius or H3 VR, or just spend an evening wandering around VR chat talking to complete strangers I'll never meet again. Maybe tomorrow. And every time I do finally put that stupid plastic brick on my head, for those couple hours it still feels like the future. Maybe that's why I can't bring myself to really sell it. Because no matter how much dust gathers on the headset, the worlds inside are still waiting. Hey guys, quick side note, please check out the link below for Boosty, because it leads to the artist that I am paying to make my comic. But sadly, my self-funding isn't really enough, so if you could help out, it would be a great deal. So please check out the link below and help me make my comic. Can't really spoil or say anything now, but if enough funding is provided, I can finally talk about it in one of the videos in the future. Thank you for your time. Everything I say after this message is a satire and in no way represents reality. It's an exaggeration for comedic effect. Oh my fucking god, the reason this piece of shit didn't want to set up was because of Windows fucking firewall. Mark Cumberbatch, you vile son of a bitch, why is it that the moment ChatGPT became popular, every motherfucker in Silicon Valley simultaneously developed collective amnesia about how to write a proper fucking application? Who coded this? Did you fire your software engineers and replace them with a room full of GPT instances, 3 interns, a fucking whiteboard that just has vibe coded, and a half-empty can of Monster? Oh, and since so many of you Silicon Valley's visionaries happen to speak Russian, что вы, блять, на вайп-кодили? Какого рожна эта параша требует отключить фаервол? Вы код писали или проводили спиритический сеанс с ChatGPT через Visual Studio? Маму вашу вайп-кодил, айтишники, блять. And you, Mark Grayson from Einviks. How's that metaverse doing? And remember that? The glorious future, where everyone was supposed to strap a 2-kilo brick to their face to attend a fucking Zoom meeting with legless avatars. You burned tens of billions of dollars to invent a worse version of real life. Nobody wants to go to a meeting, and you thought the solution was to make it virtual. Billions of dollars later, and the metaverse has roughly the same population as a gas station at 3 in the morning. Блять, ладно, сейчас что-то другое придумаю. That's like trying to fix food poisoning by serving the same chicken in 4K.
This chicken is cold!
And then, you change the company name. Facebook is now Meta. Oh, well, fuck me, I guess that fixes everything. That's like putting a fake mustache on your company and introducing yourself as your twin brother. Oh no, officer, Facebook left town years ago. I am Meta, completely different guy. Meta mis jueves en tu boca, pendejo. And the AI, oh my fucking god, every update, we added AI. Why? It writes your emails. I can write for myself. It summarizes PDFs. I can read. I'm not fucking 2 years old. It generates ads. You people keep talking about building the future. How about building software that doesn't require me to sacrifice my firewall, my privacy, my sanity, my firstborn child, my social security number, 3 goats, a blood sample, 2 forms of identification, and a fucking goat again just to click log in. I guess there isn't really a point to this video. Not every rant really needs one. Sometimes you just need to remember something you genuinely loved and feel like talking about it. Maybe VR never became the future. Maybe Zuckerberg spent enough money to build an actual moon base chasing whatever the fuck metaverse was supposed to be. Maybe my headset will spend another month collecting dust after I finish recording this video. But I don't regret buying it. Not even a little. Because for every controller I smacked into a wall, for every hour spent trying to get Oculus Link to cooperate, for every Steam crash, there was another memory. Another stupid conversation in VR chat, another impossible shot in H3 VR, another anomaly explored and scare found in Into the Radius, another Combine Patrol avoided, another world I got to visit for a little while. And honestly, I think that's enough. Yes, another montage is coming up. It's basically my calling card now. Don't like it? Then suck me off.
Вам жесткий рэп. У меня даже во снах, блять, быстрый век. Но вижу свой трек, как РЗТ. Они говорят, драйв ППЦ. Это панк-рок, шлюха. Это панк-рок, шлюха. Это панк-рок, шлюха. Это панк-рок, шлюха. Это панк-рок, я все сказал. Вот моя коза. Вау-вау, жму прям по газам. Я здесь всем все доказал.
Это панк-рок, вечно мне круто. Ты как бич в пакете в этом платье. Они хотят моих денег, но их получат игры в стиме. Сучка как мазил, охуенно. Как киберпанк, на ней шмотки легенда. Хули антихайп заварет. Шлюха альтуха, пират. Я не вудпекер, но долблю чук-чук-чук. Мотор бога, я тор, но не браузер. Говорю, не думая, выходит, я абьюзер. Шлюха индастриал, это трэп. Эрик Госбастерс, мы на хате ставим трэп. Серега, официально ты теперь панк круче, чем букер. Я, мы, шлюха, это панк-рок.